So we are right now at a crucial point in Ubisoft's history. If you look at their stock price right now, it is the lowest we have seen it in a very long time, and that's for good reason. We're talking about a combination of myriad game flops, high-profile flops like Avatar from Tears of Pandora not selling as well as they expected, Star Wars Outlaws flopping, Skull and Bones not doing great numbers, X-Defiant being a live service that they recently shut down, Prince of Persia Lost Crown, that was a great game, but unfortunately just didn't catch on and so forth, combined with myriad game delays and cancellations that has led to a bunch of layoffs and studio closures. The company is in the most precarious position it's been maybe ever. Now, recently, Assassin's Creed Shadows launched, and they have reported that 3 million players have checked out the game as of March 27th, 2025. That means that this game is performing the second best any Assassin's Creed has ever done, second highest day one sales revenue in Assassin's Creed franchise history, just behind Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, we'll see the longevity of the sales of this game, whether it can continue to sell millions upon millions of units. It's important to note that just because a game sells millions of units doesn't mean it necessarily meets companies' expectations, because especially in the position that Ubisoft is in, they need Assassin's Creed Shadows to not just do well, it needs to do gangbusters, and the only way that can happen is if the game has long legs and sells really well over a long period of time, but it is certainly off to a pretty good start overall. Now, on the same day that the 3 million players figure was announced, on March 27th, 2025, Ubisoft also released the following press release titled, "Ubisoft accelerates its transformation by laying foundation for new operating model with the creation of a subsidiary and injecting of 1.16 billion euros of cash from selected investor Tencent." So Ubisoft has been contemplating ways that they can save the company, and this right here is kind of what they came up with. This is essentially their last-ditch effort. It's a rather precarious and uncomfortable position that they're in, but they're hoping that this is going to be the thing that's going to start paving the road towards some kind of comeback or recovery. Now, speaking of discomfort, you know what does mitigate that? The sponsor of today's video, Hbada, makers of ergonomic furnitures like the E3 Pro chair here that keeps you comfortable during work and play. Assembling the chair was a fairly easy process, and when I saw it come together, I was immediately struck by how aesthetically pleasing it looked. Whether it's for home, for office, for gaming, it just aesthetically fits in just about any room you put it in. But what really makes this chair shine is how adjustable every component is. The backrest can be slid up and down as well as reclined. The headrest is fully adjustable in height, angle, and length. The seat can be moved forward and backwards. The lumbar support can be moved up and down and extended and retracted, as well as featuring wings that can be tilted for waist support. The armrest can be raised or lowered, rotated, and even tilted for better comfort when holding a device like a controller. And then there is the footrest, which combined with the reclining function makes for a very comfortable resting position. It's just a really nice chair with comfortable and breathable fabric that improve your posture, diminish discomfort, and can accommodate all kinds of situations. As someone whose work involves sitting a lot throughout the day, the adjustability of this chair and the good it does for my posture is very welcome. And when I just want to kick back, relax, and play some games, the chair offers features to make that a great experience as well. So if you're in the market for a new chair or know somebody who you can gift a chair to who will appreciate comfortable, flexible chairs like this, I would genuinely give Hbada a look. It might just be what you're looking for, and you can get yours by using my link in the description and comment section below. Anyway, back to the news. So yeah, right here we have Ubisoft's definitive plan moving forward. Prior to this, we saw that Ubisoft was potentially considering a buyout and taking the company private, which was a plan with various turmoil surrounding it. But what they ultimately came up with was something that Bloomberg also kind of reported on, something that they kind of leaked before Ubisoft made the announcement back in March 14th, 2025. It reads right here, Assassin's Creed creator Ubisoft said to seek gaming backers. Tencent is among the firms invited to bid for stake in a new entity, and this new entity is essentially a subsidiary that holds some of Ubisoft's biggest IPs. The unit is to hold some core Ubisoft IP, including Assassin's Creed. And now, per Ubisoft's statement, we know that's exactly what's happening, and that whole press release from Ubisoft was also summarized by news outlet Bloomberg. Essentially, Ubisoft, what they're doing to mitigate the financially precarious situation they're in is creating a subsidiary that is specifically dedicated to holding and creating and kind of nurturing their biggest IPs, their three biggest IPs, which are Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. This subsidiary is an enterprise that is valued at around 4 billion euros, roughly $4.3 billion. This evaluation comes in from myriad investments, but among the biggest investments was none other than Tencent Holdings, who decided to invest 1.16 billion euros to acquire a 25% stake in the new entity, in this subsidiary specifically. And this is a company that already holds a 10% stake in Ubisoft. The Guillemot family are still the majority shareholders, but Tencent is not too far behind with that 10% stake in Ubisoft. And something that Bloomberg highlights here is that the unit's 4 billion euros valuation is actually higher than Ubisoft's current enterprise value. Tencent believes the group's shares are undervalued, which is why the Chinese company felt that confident in investing that much money in this subsidiary that they hope will mark sort of a new beginning that investors can get excited about. And so within this new subsidiary will be all of the teams that will be working on Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six Siege moving forward. And Yves Guillemot is pretty excited about this development, saying that the cash injection of over 1 billion euros is very significant and solves the group's financial problems. This is a foundational step in changing Ubisoft's operating model that will enable us to be both agile and ambitious. Beyond that press release, Ubisoft also sent out an internal memo to employees discussing the changes that will take place at Ubisoft as a result of this negotiation and deal, as reported right here by Insider Gaming in an article titled Yves Guillemot's Internal Memo on Ubisoft and Tencent's New Subsidiary. So among the bits to highlight in this statement to employees is we will establish a dedicated subsidiary within Ubisoft that will bring together our three most powerful franchises, Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Far Cry. This subsidiary will gather the teams working on these brands, primarily in the studios of Montreal, Quebec City, Sherbrooke, Saguenay, Barcelona, and Sofia. Tencent will be a 25% shareholder of this new subsidiary with the aim of boosting these franchises so they become undisputed global icons. This will give us the means to accelerate the changes we have been discussing for several months across the group, changes that many of you have been longing for. So they're saying that this cash infusion will allow them to implement some of the feedback that developers have given Ubisoft, primarily when it concerns putting the creation of unique games and player satisfaction back at the heart of our daily work. This is what will enable us to return to a higher level of profitability. It seems as though Ubisoft is saying, oh, we're realizing now that what developers want is for us to give them the autonomy to make the best game possible, and that will bring higher levels of profitability. With this investment, it'll make it easier for us to give you that autonomy, is kind of the implication of what the words are saying here. You don't say Ubisoft. Good products bringing in profitability because customers will want good products. Wow, I'm glad you finally, got that revelation. Though words are one thing, execution is a completely other thing. Though with Assassin's Creed Shadows, we've seen them kind of step back from some of the schemes that they try to implement with Star Wars Outlaws. So they remove stuff like the early access stuff and some of the additions that they were planning to release that, included exclusive missions and whatnot, stuff that drew a lot of negative PR, stuff that pissed people off, stuff that essentially said, if you don't pay us more money, then you're not going to get the full game, all the content that is readily available, which is just a really shitty anti-consumer practice. Now, per Insider Gaming, employees are nervous about these changes, especially those who are not within the group of IPs that the new subsidiary will implement, especially given the importance that Ubisoft is placing in those three IPs, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six Siege. They called it their most powerful IPs, and that's making those working on other franchises kind of concerned about their fate, especially given Ubisoft's propensity for layoffs and studio closures. Marie-Sophie de Waubert, I'm sure I butcher that pronunciation, Chief Studios and Portfolio Officer, said, "The agreement we announced is a powerful enabler and an exciting opportunity for Ubisoft. It will help us accelerate our evolution and improve how we make games with greater focus and agility. If you're not currently working on these brands, it doesn't mean your work matters any less. This agreement will benefit all of Ubisoft," is what they claim, but come on, this is a corporation we're talking about. Of course, they're going to place more importance on the things that are profitable, that make them look better in the eyes of investors. I think employees being concerned, the ones outside of the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six circle, have every right to be concerned. With this announcement, the impression that Ubisoft has given off is that those working on those big three franchises are the A team and everyone else is kind of the B, C team. But we'll see how this plays out. So I guess now the question is, what does this all ultimately do for Ubisoft? What benefits does creating this subsidiary ultimately grant for the company as a whole, aside from it being something that, investors get excited about, especially with Tencent's investment and cash infusion? I guess the hope for Ubisoft is that seeing the cash infusion going into this, that the amount of money that this could ultimately contribute to making the games better and potentially more appealing to audiences will allow the company to get back to profitability. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got folks like Michael Pachter and various analysts chiming in on this whole situation and how all of this feels like, I don't know, smoke and mirrors more than anything. It doesn't really feel like a lot's changed, even though Ubisoft is announcing it like it's this big deal. What Michael Pachter said, who is the managing director of equity research at Wedbush Securities, but was also like a games industry analyst. A lot of you may know him from the commentary he had on, outlets like Pack Attack and whatnot, where he gave his takes on what he believes certain developments will lead to. So here's what he had to say about this whole situation. Ubisoft's management is overly optimistic that this will result in investors valuing the company much higher. Again, it's all about creating the perception that, especially with Tencent's investment and with the investment that's going into the subsidiary, that all of these franchises, the big three, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, and Rainbow Six, will benefit greatly from that, and in turn will make the company more profitable as these products get that kind of investment to make them better. But more money is not necessarily kind of going to lead to better products. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think budgets can be overinflated and projects, their scale can be overambitious. And I think ultimately trying to do more instead of like actually kind of scaling down a little bit can lead to a situation where it causes development troubles because a project is too ambitious for them to execute on. Michael Pachter believes that at the end of the day, no matter how much investment goes into the subsidiary, the rest of Ubisoft is burdened by high operating expense and debt. The company isn't magically worth more solely because they separate the good stuff from the bad stuff. And this is a take that that's kind of the first thought that came to mind is, it just feels like they're separating things, but and then they're getting a cash infusion because they decided to kind of create this delineation. But I don't know if that ultimately does anything for the company's structure, the way they make games, and the financial troubles that they're in, aside from the cash infusion, which might help them. But how does that benefit the way the company runs as a whole? How does that benefit the way they design games, the way they make games, the kind of the ideals that go behind their games? There has to be a fundamental shift in the way the company operates. Just throwing more money into something is not going to be what saves a company. Throwing more money into a company doesn't change the fact that games still take a really long time to make, and they're taking longer and longer to make as the scale and ambition of these projects scale upwards to an unsustainable level. It doesn't change the fact that Ubisoft has issues when it comes to releasing games on time or keeping projects on track with myriad game delays. It doesn't change the fact that Ubisoft's game design has gotten stale, and so we're seeing titles like Star Wars Outlaws and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, despite leveraging those huge IPs that are Avatar and Star Wars, still flop ultimately, despite the amount of money that's being poured into making these games as big and as ambitious as possible. So all of those things ultimately still remain the same. And so this subsidiary situation, I don't know that that's ultimately going to benefit Ubisoft. What needs to happen is a fundamental shift in the way they make games, the priorities that they have when it comes to what constitutes a good product, and ensuring that they kind of meet the quality standards that have been set by some of the most prolific studios today, who kind of have come up by nurturing themselves by kind of through trial and error up until they kind of mastered the genre that they are experts in. They have to kind of nurture companies in the way that Sony has with their studios. They have to kind of do what CD Projekt and Larian and Hazelight and FromSoft and all these prolific studios have done to kind of slowly build up to a point where it's not about what games they release. It's just because the studio as an entity has garnered so much goodwill from the gaming community that no matter what they release, people will be excited by it because they know that what they release will be just like really quality stuff and will be exciting stuff to look forward to. Their stuff just keeps selling better and better and better because of the reputation that they've garnered. Whereas Ubisoft, their reputation remains what it is. It's mixed. Their reputation ultimately is that of a company that has gotten too complacent with their game design and have kind of shipped games with a lot of similarities. And so that's where Ubisoft has to make a fundamental shift. They have to win back goodwill. They have to win back audience trust, and they have to make people excited about that Ubisoft logo in the way that the CD Projekt logo, the FromSoft logo, the Hazelight logo, the Larian logo, you name it. When that comes up in like a game trailer, immediately you're like, I don't care what this is. I know this is going to be good. I know they're going to cook with this. There's that immediate hype that you get. Whereas when you see a Ubisoft logo in a trailer, you wonder whether, well, first of all, whether it's real footage, because Ubisoft is known to have promoted games with essentially fake footage that overinflates the quality of a game, but also whether, we can expect something that genuinely pushes the boundaries of game genre or the boundaries of, just Ubisoft's own game design, or whether it's going to be more of the same that some people will enjoy as, the comfort food that Ubisoft has become for them. But Ubisoft has just kind of fallen behind when it comes to like innovation. And that's what's ultimately going to define Ubisoft's future. Money doesn't lead to more creative output. Money will help with the creation of projects, but it's more about how those projects are managed that will define whether people get really hyped about those products. They have a few exceptions like Assassin's Creed, which no matter what, always sell well. But even Assassin's Creed Shadows failed to ultimately meet the record that Assassin's Creed Valhalla set. Now, to be fair, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was released during COVID, during a time when everyone was locked down and game sales skyrocketed. But then you look at a situation like Monster Hunter Wilds and the way it's breaking records for the whole series, and the way that game wasn't released during COVID and still managed to become the best-selling or, the fastest-selling Monster Hunter game and stuff like that. That's a series whose reputation has continued to climb. And that reputation is what's allowed that series to continuously become more and more popular and continue to break records with each new release. All this investment stuff's great, but I think Michael Pachter is right in that just separating the good stuff from the bad stuff doesn't ultimately change all of the issues with the company. Not only the fact that they're burdened by high operating expenses and debt and all of this financial stuff, but also just their design ethos, if you will, the creativity of the company and what they allow developers to cook and the kind of creativity that they encourage. That's where I think Ubisoft needs to really improve and really reconsider their overall structure and their way of doing things if they intend to re-spark that kind of hype for the logo and for the games that they output. But I suppose only time will tell how all of this will play out. That's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Ubisoft creating this subsidiary and getting this investment. And, what do you think this will ultimately do for Ubisoft? Do you think this will be what will allow Ubisoft to kind of come back and output better products or products that people get more excited about? Or do you think this is all just ultimately something that will be more of like a temporary solution and just some tape to something that requires, much more than that? That's something that requires a complete reconstruction. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.